Howdy, greetings from the final stop on this Middle Eastern tour, MSOM 612, coming today from Kuwait City in the country of Kuwait. It's just been thrilling for me to spend time the last few weeks in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Doha, Qatar, and Kuwait City, mainly because I had operated falsely, of course, under the assumption that many of these countries are exactly alike over here, and that's not true. I mean, while they do have some similarities in certain areas, there are some incredible differences between them. It's like saying that yeah, there aren't any differences between South Carolina and California. We all know there's big differences between those. So a lot of the same things apply here. So just grateful to be here and learning a lot actually about people, culture, business, those types of things. So I wanted to do lesson 4 review and lesson 5 preview this week for you to hopefully give you some tips on what we just studied and then what we're going to be looking at moving forward. Lesson 4 started off with a discussion on competitive responses when you're surprised by a new product introduction. What do you do? This has happened to me so many times in business. I mean, you leave the office on Friday, all happy and just excited about the weekend. Then you get there on Monday, and the first thing you see is one of your major competitors has introduced a new competing product that looks pretty darn good and looks that it may uh, influence or impact your ability to make your numbers and to deliver all the key objectives that you have for your business. Well, what happens too often, and I want you to read my response on this one too. What happens, and I put that response, by the way, in the grade book. What happens too often is people immediately react and do things that are outside their mission, outside the vision for the brand, and they end up doing more harm by moving away. I mean, if somebody, and they even do that with price. I mean, I've always been one of those things that says price is never a sustainable competitive advantage. So if you have somebody comes in and undercuts you in price, increase the quality of your product delivery versus meet and price per price, because again, how low can you go? And that's been one of the big challenges I think for businesses over the last few years is there hasn't been any product price inflation. There hadn't been a whole lot of creativity out there. And so everyone's been competing on price. And again, you can't sustain that over time because unless you're the lead person in that area and have very deep pockets, that's hard to sustain over time. And so the key message this week is to give you an idea of what you do. I mean, how do you react? Because it will happen. It will happen to you in different areas. And again, the key message here is that strategic plans should be fluid documents. And if there are things that change because of the external environment or the internal environment in your organization, you can't just say, okay, I'm going to have my feet in cement and I'm not going to move off of my strategic plan because I created it, I spent a lot of time on it, I worked real hard to develop it. Well, sometimes you need to adjust and adapt. And that's the message coming out of the discussion board this week. And then the second thing this week was an assignment and an application that talked about creating an atmosphere of innovation in your companies. And I referenced How the Mighty Fall, and as you read that and the different steps that was put together by Collins on that, I think are really good. And I've talked to companies about that who honestly just think they've got the world by the tail because they're looking backwards on what they've done in the past versus looking forward. And so the whole atmosphere of innovation in organization, I think one of the key messages I want to do and message I want to send to you is have patience for dreamers in your organization. Too often dreamers are looked at as psychos. I mean, oh yeah, we don't want to have David in the group because he's going to bring up this idea that he has that'll never work. We'll never get it off the ground. The CEO and the board of directors will never approve it, and so on and so on and so on. And so therefore, these people are kind of treated as outsiders. Well, I used to bring dreamers into my organization because those are the ones that would throw out stuff that honestly I had no clue to think about. And they would bring something, and may not at the time, I may have thought they were nuts when they suggested it, but I'm driving home at night going, you know what? There might be something there that has some legs. And so the key message out of that is to make sure that in organizations you don't put everybody the same way. You don't try and treat everybody the same way. You don't look at things the same way all the time. Have some people in who are just going to bust stuff up sometimes. You're going to handle some things and break them. Yeah, you have to be patient. Yeah, you have to be long-suffering in those areas. But those are the people who make quantum leaps versus a revolutionary change versus just evolutionary change in organizations. Okay? And then the course project edition this week was about strategic issues. So you looked at the external environment, you looked at the internal environment, and now as you evaluate those two things, you recognize that there are issues and opportunities that are created because of those. And so what I'm asking you to do now is to begin to look at those things, look at external environments, look at internal environments with an eye on what are they telling me as a manager. So external issues, internal issues should lead to some sort of thought action on your part, rather than just accept it. Again, what I find too often in leaders that I consult with in leadership organizations, they're really good at telling you what the issues are. But to me, the key point is how can you move beyond the identification of the issue to moving forward from there, saying, okay, that's an issue, but what are we going to begin to do about it? Which is what you're going to be doing in lesson 6 coming up. Okay, so that was lesson 5. Let's move on to lesson 4. Let's move on to lesson 5. Lesson 5 starts with a discussion board. Okay, so what's going to happen? Hopefully, you're seeing how all these lessons are stair-stepping from each other. So in lesson 4, you looked at strategic issues. So you have all these issues and opportunities, but now organizations can't do all of them. Okay. There's no way that you're going to have the time, energy, resources, financial or human resources to be able to do all the things that you think need to be done. And so you need to begin to prioritize those areas. And so, but if you do one, and you put the resources against that, that by its very definition means you're not putting resources against other ones. And so therein lies the concept of opportunity cost. And so opportunity costs are really important because, again, action on one creates inaction on another. And so what are the implications of that? And so I want you to begin to think holistically about this, not just to look at it and say, we need to do these 15 things, because in an organization, you're not going to do that. I'll give you a perfect example. Every year when I was at ConAgra, my team would go to the CEO of the company and his force. We thought of them as the Federal Reserve. Okay, they were the people who would allocate additional money to build plants, to invest in capital, to invest in restructure and things like that. Well, ConAgra had 110 independent operating companies as part of ConAgra. And so I was part of the frozen food division. Our division was $2 billion in sales. We were one of the bigger ones, so we got a little more focus and attention. But what happened is every single operating company was going to the CEO asking for capital. Well, if the whole company had, let's say, I don't know, $10 billion that year to spend on capital projects, well, we were fighting with other companies inside of ConAgra for that capital. All right? So we had to make sure that the things that we did were really focused on the greatest return on capital for the company. Well, guess what? Hunt Wesson, which was another independent operating company of ConAgra, were doing the same thing. Swift meat products were doing the same thing. And so all those are balancing act. And so the CEO and his team had to look at this and say, okay, if we do this, we're not going to be able to do this. So therefore, there's an opportunity cost associated with that. So understand, as you put together your proposals, not everything's going to fly. Everything may be a great idea, but everything's not going to fly because you don't have capital to fund every idea that's out there. Okay? And then the application this week is really great for me this week because it talks about complexities in global business. And I give you a video that talks about McDonald's and their global focus. I will tell you that I've been in a McDonald's since I've been over here. I don't like going to them because there's so many other great places to go. But I always go into them from a research perspective and say, what are they doing now? And so you go into the McDonald's over here. They change their menu based upon where they are. Now, you have some of the same types of things, but the ingredients may be totally different. So if you go, for example, and have breakfast at McDonald's here and have an Egg McMuffin, the Egg McMuffin that you have, if it has sausage in it, is beef sausage and not pork sausage because of religious issues. And so that's one of the differences. You'll also see that there's some local things on the menus as well as supplements. But if you use Starbucks, on the other hand, you go into a Starbucks over here. I actually did a Starbucks video for my undergraduate marketing class. I shot it from Chiang Mai in Thailand. And so if you look at the Starbucks in Chiang Mai in Thailand, It looks exactly like any Starbucks that you'd find in Charleston. The only difference is the menu has the prices in Thai bahts, versus U.S. dollars, and so the menu is almost the same. Uh, the product offerings are the same, and so I just say that to say this: things are different between companies. Starbucks decides to go one direction, McDonald's decides to go another direction. And so you have to ask yourself, well, why are they doing it that way? And hopefully that'll be something that you can look at going forward and understand some of the background behind that. The course project edition this week is about strategic alternatives. Remember last week I just finished talking about it. You talked about strategic issues. So after you do your external environment review, you do your internal environment review, you come up with some strategic issues and opportunities. Well, this week I want you to begin to talk about what are some specific options that you need to address. So you're beginning the narrowing down process of this. So you're not providing a total recommendation yet, but you're really looking at it saying, okay, here are the categories of things that I really want to begin to focus on because I think they have the most potential to impact going forward. Now, I'm not so much interested in what those are as to why you think those are the things you should focus on. All right, so make sure that you draw a clear connection between the issue opportunity and your strategic alternative that you're presenting at that time. All right, and then a little bit later, so next week, you're actually going to be providing the recommendations, but not this week. You just talk about strategic alternatives. All right, over halfway through the class, this thing's flying by. Hope you're having a good time in the class. I've enjoyed reading your comments so far. And just look forward to this week as we begin to hit the ground here on the key areas, which is always the fun stuff when you begin making recommendations and then implementation plans for your suggestions and things to overall management. Again, my key point to you, make sure you're specific on these. If you're a boss and you get a general comment that says, we need to do this, but you don't tell them how you're going to do it, trash can. So make sure that you're very, very, very specific. Strategic plans, by their very definition, are incredibly specific. So don't get caught up in the general stuff that you're throwing out. Make sure that you're very specific as you go forward. All right? Have a great week. Study hard. Next time I chat with you, I think I'll be back in Dallas. So look forward to connecting then. All right? Take care.